I want to welcome you all today. My name is David Silberman. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Clinical Research Fast Track. And it's my great, great honor to be able to present this webinar today on finding your fit in the field of clinical research. Clinical research is an incredible industry where we are working on life-saving and life-changing treatments. And today we have a special guest, Brad Hightower. Brad Hightower owns and operates research sites in Oklahoma. He consults with sites and leaders around the country. He works with some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. And I went on your website. I did some research on you, Brad. You've worked with sponsors like Bayer, Amgen, Abbott, AstraZeneca, Merck, Lilly, Janssen, which is part of Johnson & Johnson, just to name a few. He works with the major CROs like Covance, which is now LabCorp, as well as IQVIA, and I don't want to name them all, and I don't want to get them wrong, but I know those two for sure. He's worked with medical device companies like Medtronic. He has countless physicians that he's working with who are PIs in therapeutic areas like cardiology, neurosciences, dermatology, gastroenterology, just to name a few. It is my great honor. And if we were in the audience, we would give a huge, huge round of applause to Brad Hightower. Brad, thank you for joining us today. It's such an honor. And I just want to kick things off to just learn a little bit about your background. And before we do, we got this great microphone in front of you. And not only are you a site owner, a clinical research expert, you are also the host of the podcast Note to File. Now, Note to File, for those of you who haven't heard it, I know you can get it at is it on Spotify, Brad? It's on Apple. It's on wherever you go get your podcast. Note to File is an industry-specific podcast. It's one of probably the best top in the that I know of in clinical research. So when you're not running trials, you're running the podcast. It's so exciting to have you here. But how did you get into this field? Can you give us a little bit about your journey into clinical research?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started out in clinical research, and I've already seen a question sort of going around this, but when I started, I didn't have much of a medical background at all. I did work in a plasma center. I came in as a entry level, and I eventually learned some phlebotomy. But like so many people I talked to, I kind of came into clinical research as by accident. I had a contact who had worked at a local university as a research coordinator, was leaving the position and thought that's something I might be interested in pursuing. So I went in, I interviewed. I really wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. At the time, I didn't have a degree. I didn't have a bachelor's degree. I didn't have a associate's degree or anything. So I came in pretty cold and pretty green to clinical research. So I worked in a neurology department at a local university. I came on as a research assistant. So for the first year or two, I really had no idea at all what I was doing. Again, it's sort of a story I hear time and time again, something that it's getting better over time, thanks to people like David here and all the great people at Clinical Research Fast Track. But yeah, I really kind of floundered along, not really knowing, what I was doing. Did not get good training. Over time, I was able to slowly sort of figure out what I was doing and how to read a protocol, how to consent a patient, how to enter data into the EDC, all of these sorts of things that we all know and love.
Yeah, you're bringing up terminology like EDC. We're going to get into some of that. For those of you, that's the electronic data capture, the software we're entering into. And we're going to have a lot of lingo, which is why we train people, of course. But did you start out in a hospital or doctor's office with a small site? Like, what was that first job?
It was an academic institution. So it was a neurology department within a university. So we worked mostly within their clinic, a little bit of hospital side as well. So there was a hospital on campus as well. So it was sort of a split, but mostly, again, within a neurology clinic that was a academic department within a large university.
So how on earth did you get from just working at this clinic, university, to owning and operating sites, having this podcast, being a leader in the industry? Like, how do you get from there to here?
So yeah, I frankly, even though I appreciate and respect research that goes on at university, I learned very early on that it's not the most efficient system, right? We had to deal with local institutional review boards. So in order to get a study approved and able to do it, it had to be reviewed. It may take 6 months in some instances. These big institutions, while they have a lot of people and a lot of resources, it took a really long time to get anything done. And it also sort of conglomerated research all within under one roof, right? So over time, that occurred to me that there's a lot of problems with that system. So I set out to really partner with physicians who want to do clinical research but don't have the infrastructure to do it. So we're able to get out into more underserved communities, provide research infrastructure for physicians who aren't affiliated with large academic institution. So we provide a revenue stream for physicians, are able to offer patients access to trials they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And frankly, it was a culmination of all my years of learning, paying attention, seeing the inefficiencies, and sort of taking those outside of the system and being able to lay them out in different physician clinics.
So you're a real entrepreneur. You saw a need, you saw these lack of efficiencies, and you're like, wait, why aren't people doing it better? Why are we wasting this time or doing extra processes? And you're like, you said, I think I have a better mousetrap. I can do this better. And you went in and you started, I imagine, with one doctor, one site, and just built from there.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I started with one cardiology clinic, and we had a small room. I started out in a 10 by 10 room within the cardiology clinic. I offered my services for free and said, here I am. I'm free. We'll split study income. Let me provide research infrastructure for you. We're able to slowly get a couple of studies off the ground and took it step by step. It was completely, bootstrapped, no investments, no funding or anything like that. It was just a risk I took. And here we are. I think I have almost 70 physicians sort of under our umbrella now here in Oklahoma.
77. Wait, did I hear you correctly? 70.
That's correct.
70 physicians. Okay. And how many therapeutic areas are you working on? I mentioned 4, but there's probably
as many as possible. So it occurred to me pretty early on that it really served me to diversify as much as possible. If you've been in the industry, or even if you haven't, you probably understand that there may be a hot area while another is not, and that may switch over time. So I couldn't have all my eggs in one basket. If cardiology, there weren't any studies to pursue, I needed to be in gastroenterology, and my newest venture is oncology, writing an oncology department now. So that's the newest area we're entering.
Excellent, because there's a huge need for oncology. And before COVID, it was the #1 area of investment in clinical research. And then when COVID hit, so many COVID trials just overwhelmed us. And really, Brad, that is one of the reasons why there's so many more jobs open right now in clinical research. Because of COVID, we still had all the other trials we were working on. And all of a sudden, there's the flood of the therapeutics, the vaccine trials, the diagnostic trials, and then the combination trials. Well, what if someone has COVID and another condition? What kind of medications can we test? And actually, that brings up the question. Can you explain for our audience, what are we talking about in clinical research? People know about healthcare. They know about, there's drug companies, there's medical device companies. What is clinical research?
Sure. So, in order for these drugs to be proven safe and effective, they have to be thoroughly tested in human population. So, in order for that to happen, obviously they need to have a great deal of patience in order to collect enough data on. So these drug companies, device companies have to go work with physicians. So they'll work with physicians all over the country, like you alluded to earlier, sometimes internationally. And so that's where your people like me, sort of acting as site staff, help that process by, maybe negotiating budgets and contracts with the sponsor and helping submit regulatory documents and submit to the IRB so that we have make sure we're doing our studies safely and ethically, as well as actually recruit and see the patients, follow the protocols, collect data, ensure the studies being done in a safe manner above all else. And that's again, sort of a high level discussion. You can go pretty deep with all the things that entails.
Yeah. So clinical research really is what happens before we can practice medicine. Now, we could have ideas. The drug companies are always searching for new treatments and new therapies. The medical device companies might say we have a new pacemaker or we have a new stent or all of these things. But how do we know if it's, first of all, safe? And then if it's effective? How do we know? And that's the clinical trial. And people look at these job descriptions, Brad, and they're like, oh, I can follow a protocol. I can learn some rules and regulations. I can do all this. But the industry's a little gun shy. And I don't know if people really realize that this is a specialty. Can you talk a little? I mean, you mentioned IRBs, you mentioned protocols. Like, can you go in a little deeper just to let people know that there's a lot going on here?
There is. I think it's we deal with a lot of jargon, a lot of acronyms. It's obviously it's a highly regulated field that we work in. We have to make sure that we're maintaining patient safety at all times, and that these protocols are being carried out as by the book as possible. So it's not necessarily something you can go into without some real forethought and some real sort of giving it the dignity that it deserves. So yes, it's a highly technical and obviously very important field that we work in.
Yeah, it really, really is. There's a great question in the chat. I have to bring it up because I had the same question. So you found that job at the university and your friend, and you started working, and then you saw the need. You started your own site. Did you ever get a degree? Do you have a college degree or not? What's your education?
I did. So actually, there's a local community college that had a clinical research coordinator program. So actually, I started there. I went and completed that program. And then I later finished up with a bachelor's degree in business after that. So I did go ahead and complete my degree, honestly, in large part due to I was the director of research for a large cardiology hospital. So in order for me to get that position, I did have to finish my degree. So I did.
Okay, but case in point, people are like, do I need a medical degree? Do I need to be a nurse? No, you have a business degree and you're running trials with 70 physicians in multiple therapeutic areas, no official medical training. Now, I know you've learned a lot along the way, folks, because this is a field where you're constantly learning. So even though Brad says I have a business degree, he knows a lot about medicine because we're learning on the job. And that's what's so exciting about this field. Why people love it so much is because we're always learning, we're always growing, because we are working today on tomorrow's medicine. You're working on oncology trials. There are now gene therapies in rare diseases where we're using genetic material, or we're updating our genes to create new treatments. It's using CRISPR technology and new technologies. It's so exciting where this field is going. But you don't have to have a medical degree. You don't even have to have a science background, which is so exciting. So Brad, I was teasing you earlier. You are now on the other side. Normally you're asking all the questions. And this is the first time we're meeting. So I am surprised because I want to share this slide with you. These are some of our fast track instructors and graduates who have been on your show. Elizabeth Weeks Rowe, who was just on, I think last month, who is the editor of the CRA guide to monitoring clinical trials. She was on your show. Jeannie Farnsworth, a former director at Clinical Research Fast Track. You've interviewed her before, Mario Sierra, Lucia Rodriguez, and there's Donna, who was one of our students, as well as Monet Brown. And Monet wasn't one of our students. You interviewed her, and actually that interview is one of the reasons we hired her. And Monet helps us with education, teaching, and running our classes. So how does it feel to be on the other side, Brad, where you're not asking the questions, but now you're answering them?
Yeah, it's a little different, a little intimidating, but I guess fair play.
There you go. Okay. So here we go. We have all of these folks, and they're all interested in different types of roles in clinical research. What if you're a PsyD? What if you have a biology degree? What kind of roles are out there for people who want to move into this field?
So, and I will say, this obviously kind of comes through the lens of the site side, since my experience has been really exclusively on the site side. But what I tell people is that whatever you love, I think it's in clinical research, right? It's such a broad field. And as you kind of, again, spoke to, there's a lot of breadth there. So if you like patient contact, there's a clinical side of things where you can be a coordinator, you can interact with patients and work on your clinical skills. Maybe you like sales and marketing. Well, patient recruitment is always needed, right? And advertising for sites. If you like administrative work, maybe there's regulatory role that might suit you better. So again, I think that there's a niche for just about everyone. It can vary, obviously, depending on the structure of sites that's as varied as anything else. But there's a fit for you, I think, no matter where your interest lies.
Yeah, so we did have a question coming in from Saira, and thank you, Saira. This is someone with 10 years of research experience with dozens of publications. And what is the growth opportunity for someone like you? And I'm going to give you the good news and the bad news, Saira. The growth opportunity, here's the good news, is phenomenal. Because someone with your background can, with the proper training first, you have to get into the field, you have to be qualified to enter, but once you enter the field, it has limitless possibility. The bad news is you don't necessarily need 10 years of research to have those opportunities. There's people with, they're right out of college that still have those opportunities. So really, this is an opportunity for someone with a lot of experience or with very little. But okay, Brad, why don't you give us the hard news? How many years were you in the business before you started your own business? It probably took you a few, right?
It did. It was probably real close to 10 years before I decided to break off on my own. And I think, probably I could have done sooner, but I think, again, it's really a testament to the change in the industry that places like Clinical Research Fast Track exist. Because again, if you can get that head start, you may be able to significantly shorten that timeline to where you can really get out and be able to spread your wings and be on your own.
Yeah, and we have a student who just finished up our class, and I mentioned it, and now he is coming to compete with you. He's going to start his own site network, and right out of our class. Now, I recommend that people get a little bit of industry experience first, right? Work as a coordinator, move your way into a CRO, really gain that experience. And then, the possibilities are endless. So when we talk about a CRO, Brad, can you explain exactly what I mean? Because we mentioned sponsor, we mentioned CRO, we talked about sites. Can you real briefly, go over what are these places?
So yeah, when you say sponsor, you essentially mean the pharmaceutical or device company who owns the drug or device that's being tested. That's generally, I'd say, a fair definition. And then your CROs are sort of a middleman in a way. They oftentimes actually execute the study itself. So they may go help find sites. They may hire people, CRAs or monitors who go to the site and make sure that source data is verified. See, as I explain these things, I realize I'm using more and more words that need to be defined. It's a it's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
It really is. So the sponsor is funding the trial. They're the drug company, and then they usually contract out the work to actually oversee all the details to the CRO. The CROs often are flying around the country, finding research sites and really monitoring the quality of the data, getting those sites up and running, training the people there to make sure they're ready for the trial. But the acronyms keep flying. Someone said, what are some great entry-level positions? And can you share, where do people start in the field if they're, let's say you're right out of college and you really want to get in the industry?
So I would still actually recommend looking at local universities and academic centers, because I think oftentimes there's so many job opportunities there just based on having multiple departments, a lot of different physicians and staff. So I generally would even recommend that as a good starting point. It's a good starting point. Gives you a kind of a safe opportunity, I think, to learn what happens at a site. And I think even if your ultimate goal is to go to a CRO, I think you're going to be miles ahead if you've got good site level experience and really know how a site operates on a day-to-day basis. Outside of that, I think it doesn't hurt to look at independent sites that may be around as well. They may be perhaps a little more open to being creative, perhaps. But again, I think if I had to be pressed, I'd say look at your local universities and academic centers.
Absolutely. And to get started, usually the very first role is called a research assistant, and you're just getting your feet wet. But now the industry is so busy, and this has been going on for a long time. They're looking for people with experience. And most of the jobs out there, because everyone's so busy, they're working hard. They don't have as much time to train on the site at the university or at these research site networks. And so they're looking for people with experience. If you look at the job descriptions, they usually say 2 years of experience required or 1 to 3 years of experience. But the interesting thing, Brad, is our students come through our program and we train them in about just a few weeks, 8 days in the classroom, but then they do additional training and they're moving into these positions at the hospitals and at the site networks around the country. And another thing that's happening is the site networks are sending their new hires to us to train because they're too busy to do it on their own. And they know by putting them through our bootcamp training, they can really get them up to speed quickly. And it's so necessary. The complexity of the trials have gotten more and more over the years. Can you talk about that? Like the olden days to now, what's changed?
Yeah, I think we're certainly seeing a lot more assessments and visits required as part of these studies, which creates more burden on the sites. It's more work. It's more challenging to coordinate patients' visits and scheduling with physician or imaging or whatever the case may be. So, as you say, they're certainly getting more complex, which requires again maybe a higher level of technical knowledge for maybe coordinators coming in.
And these sites are busier and busier. I haven't asked you this. Have you grown recently, and you see your doctors and your trials increasing now compared to the past few years?
I'd say so. I think that may be in part just due to expanding through more therapeutic areas. But again, things tend to come in waves, it seems like. So again, we may have right now gastroenterology is very hot. We have maybe 10 UC Crohn's studies right now. So very, very hot, as to where dermatology has kind of gotten slow. So again, it tends to be an ebb and a flow. But I think overall, we've certainly seen a growth over the last probably 6 to 8 months.
So I wanted to share this slide with everyone because people are saying, what kind of roles are there? And we like to divide it up into the patient-facing roles, and then there's more behind the scenes sort of data, regular type roles. Can you explain the difference between the patient-facing and the data type roles?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so ultimately, we can't do clinical trials without patients. We need patients. So, I mean, your research coordinator is sort of the thing you think of when you think of a patient-facing role. So they may be consenting the patient, informing them and educating them about the trial and its risks and requirements. They may be drawing blood and performing vital signs. And then oftentimes on the back end, you've got your more data-centric roles. So perhaps a research assistant may be doing data entry. They may be taking the data collected by the coordinator and entering it into a computer. There could also be a regulatory role who their focus might be just keeping up and tracking regulatory documents for the site.
Right. Oh my gosh, we have so many questions coming in. Someone with a neuroscience background, what kind of, does the program you offer, are you able to place me accordingly? And the answer is this. First of all, there's a lot going on in neurosciences. Brad, you're running neuroscience trials, is that correct?
Yes.
For our audience, can you share what type of trials, maybe not even that you're doing specifically, but in general, what types of trials are happening in neuroscience?
Sure. I've seen a rise in migraine trials here over the last, again, about 6 months. So you've got some of the GCRP drugs that are being tested right now. There's a couple new Alzheimer's I've seen, some pediatric epilepsy. We're just getting back into doing some stroke trials and some neurosurgery trials as well. So yeah, that's always a pretty hot area in my experience, and it tends to be a little more niche, I think, on the research side. You're working more with specialists, obviously, rather than more general practices. So it can be a little more specific than some other areas are.
It is, and many of our graduates are working in the area of neuroscience because we have groups that we partner with, affiliate with, that are doing schizophrenia trials, Parkinson's trials, depression trials. There's a whole gamut, and the question was, does our program offer place into those programs? We don't place directly. What we do is introduce our students to all these opportunities. Once someone comes into our program, they're learning all the acronyms, the language, the medical terminology, the clinical research terminology, which is its own separate language that you need. But it's not just understanding the language. If you know IRB means Institutional Review Board, that's great. But really having a more depth of understanding of how that applies to your day-to-day work at a clinical trial site or at a sponsor or at a CRO, and the integration of the IRBs with the sites is so important to just have that deeper understanding. So once you have that language and understanding of protocols, of consenting, of GDP, of ICH GCP, and then you're ready to get in this field. Once you get in the field, and this question, I believe, was from Megan. Once you're in the field, Megan, then after a year, you can write your ticket. So it's not just it's a two-step process, I want to say. Step one is getting the training qualifications and getting in the field. Then it's gaining more knowledge and experience on the job. But once you have that, all of a sudden you become a hot commodity. So Brad, I know you've interviewed many of our students like Mario Sierra. He came through our program and he was helping doing business development at a site. Now he's moved on and he's moved up so quickly. And really one of the benefits of getting that training is to accelerate your growth, because there's a lot of exciting things you do, but just like a doctor has to go into residency first, it's really important that you get some training, get into the industry, get your feet wet, and work for a year or so that you can really blossom. And that's where you'll have the opportunity to, the possibilities are limitless. Brad, I wanted to ask you this. Why are you so excited about clinical research, and what pushed you or inspired you to do a podcast?
Frankly, I just love what I do. I love the industry. I love the interaction that we have with patients. I love that, I've seen device trials where, tears have been brought to these patients' eyes by the change in their quality of life. It is continually rewarding and exciting. So I just love it. I think that for a decent amount of time, sites have been sort of self-isolating, right? Sites sometimes see their other sites as being competition. And so as a result, we haven't always had a lot of great transparency in order to share best practices. So, we can get better. We can help this process work more fluidly and just more efficiently overall. So that was really all I set out to do, is to help bring people together, let them tell their stories, because I think that can be really instructive and it can be, we can all learn a lot from each other. So it really is, my podcast is not monetized or anything like that. It's just a labor of love. I mean, it's something that I believe in and that I'll, continue to do. So, something I think we desperately need in this industry.
And how long have you been doing it?
It's been about 1.5 years now. So I still feel like I'm a baby. I'm still learning kind of the best way to go about
it. Okay, well, you've definitely got the microphone, you've got the voice, and you've had so many amazing guests already, and it's such an exciting industry. We have all these questions coming in, and I'm just trying to see if we can kind of summarize them. And what are the key words you would just look up for clinical research entry level? Again, you're looking to get in the industry. You're looking for clinical research assistant positions, for coordinator positions, for CTA positions. And these jobs are the stepping stone into an incredible career. But let's say you get one of those jobs, Brad, or you come to Clinical Research Fast Track, just like our students, and we coach and guide them so they get hired quickly and they are able to really soar. But let's just say you got one of those jobs, and then where would you go from there? And what types of things, what are your opportunities once you get in the field?
So, I mean, I maybe not directly related to what you're saying, but I would make it an effort to build relationships in the industry and network, right? So I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people who make the jump from a site coordinator to a CRA based off of a relationship they made with a CRA who came to their site. If you show that you can do good work, that you are knowledgeable and honestly a pleasant person to work with, that goes a long way, and it can go a long way towards catching the eye of a CRA who may be able to put in a good word for you. Even if you're not going that route, make sure that you build good relationships with your PIs. What if you do want to break off and do your own thing? It's going to behoove you to have good relationships with physicians. So I think no matter what you do, aside from just having the knowledge and maybe the talent, I still feel like this is a very relationship-based industry. So that's one thing I would certainly sort of shout from the rafters.
You know what? On our very first day of class, you just gave the theme of our very first day. We talked about how relationships matter, and how by developing those relationships with your PI, with your team, you're able to communicate well, you can really work well. And then people are coming in, the sponsors, the CRAs, they see you. And that's how you either get promoted from within, or sometimes, and more, people are getting poached. They are getting stolen from research sites to the CRAs, to the sponsors, because there's so much demand. Once someone's in this industry and they're exhibiting that they're friendly, they're hardworking, and they get the job done. And once they do that, wow, it's really, the sky's the limit. It's absolutely incredible. We had this, one of our very first students, I love telling her story, and we're going to bring her back on the podcast. She had her PhD actually, and she couldn't get in the field of clinical research. She applied for 6 months and was just struggling. But her story is so common because the industry was looking not for someone who's a PhD. She'd been in drug discovery. She'd worked on drugs that had gone to trial and been approved, if you can believe that. Not many PhDs actually have those kinds of wins and success stories. But then she wanted to move into clinical research. She could not get hired. And it was so frustrating for her until she took our class. She came in, she took our class. We helped her get into the industry. Right after our program, she became actually in-house monitor. And she worked hard for 1 year. at the neurological facility. It was Barrows Neurology. And she made great friends with, guess who? Her CRAs. And they were at PRA Health Sciences. She got hired after a year at PRA Health Sciences. She's moved up and is now a senior director at the Center for Rare Diseases there. So the relationships are so important, but you still have to work hard. You still have to get the job done.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, we're going to turn the tables. You do so much interviewing, and it's been such a pleasure to ask you all these questions. What would you ask me if and I'm not asking for an invitation, but what would be the question you would ask me if I was on your podcast, Note to File?
Sure. I would say why start clinical research fast track? What jumped out to you that really sort of showed that need?
This was an opportunity that came to me, and I jumped at the chance. They always ask the question, is it luck or is it hard work that gets you to where you are? And I think it's a lot of both. I was running education programs in medical aesthetics. I know you've worked in the area of dermatology, and I was actually leading. I was co-founded National Laser Institute, and we were training doctors, nurses, and technicians to work in the medical aesthetic industry. And it was my brother's business. So first of all, I was working for my brother, great guy, but I don't know if you have siblings or not, but can you imagine working for your brother? Every argument we got into at business, he would win. He was the CEO. So I always wanted to do something else, something more. I always wanted to give back more and make a bigger impact. It was all about impact, about helping people live better quality lives. And then one day, a friend of ours had a site network, and it was actually the largest in the United States. And he said, wow, I'm having so much trouble finding people to hire. It's taking me 6 or 9 months to train them and get them up to speed. And I'm growing my site network. I need to onboard people quicker. And my brother said to him, he's like, hey, we're training people in these boot camp training programs in 2 weeks in medical aesthetics. What if we did a boot camp training for you in clinical research? And we put our heads together, and I talked to him, and he had all his staff who could be teachers, who had all the expertise, and we knew how to run training programs. And so we put our heads together. We created a 16-day program at the time. It's changed since then. Now it's 8 days in person, and the rest of it is online, asynchronous. But that first program was 16 days in a row. If you can imagine, long days, 10-hour days, 16 days in a row. Boy, it was hard on everyone. But what happened was we would train those folks, and they'd get hired instantly. And if our friend didn't hire them, other people in the industry were now taking notice. And I realized, Brad, this industry was more than just my friend's business. He had 80 locations around the country. And that was just a drop in the bucket. There's so many sites. And we were headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we would train our students, and they would get hired at the Mayo Clinic and places like Banner Health, where Jeannie Farnsworth, who you interviewed, was working, places that were running neurology trials, and they were running oncology trials. It was incredible. And really the impact that we're making in clinical research fast track is we were helping people who were working in jobs, and they were only making like $35,000 a year. And they would come to our program, and the minute they got out, they would go from 35 to 50, like that. And then, but that was just the beginning. Then they were getting promoted over and over again. And we were helping people actually improve their professional careers and their class mobility. And that's been so exciting for us. You got me going. You are good at this, Brad. You asked just one question.
See, it's all a strategy for me to not have to talk. I'm an introvert, so it's easy to interview people and get them going. That's my trick.
Yeah, it really is. We've had people asking questions about what types of programs that we offer and how how it works. And I just wanted to give a brief overview for everyone. Our program is designed as a boot camp training program, as I mentioned. So instead of going back for 2 years and getting a master's in clinical research, which can be very costly, the master's programs can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 a year, 1 or 2 years, big investment of money and time. What we do is we have a program where it's 8 days in a row in the classroom, but now it's on Zoom. So we have people from Oklahoma, from New York, from California, all in the same class on Zoom. We have a cohort and we train them over 8 days in the classroom. They do another about 68 hours of asynchronous online training. And then the key to our success and our student success is we coach them on helping them with their resumes, cover letters, and we introduce them to opportunities in the field. And at this point in time, we have site networks around the country calling us on a regular basis because they're hiring. It's a real there's a real demand and need for new trained individuals. Really amazing. Brad, we only have a few more minutes. And I just wanted to give you a chance in the last couple minutes to just share maybe 1 or 2 success stories of something you've worked on at your trials that could be maybe an approved drug or something that has just really been an impact for you.
I would say specifically in recent memory, we were able to work on a post-amputation pain study. So it's for people with phantom limb pain. And it's a device that stimulates the nerve, the sciatic nerve, and basically stops phantom pain. We, as a very small cardiovascular site we're working with, we were able to, out enroll Mayo clinics and the UCLAs and some of the biggest research centers in the country. And even beyond that, to see the effect it's had on these people who've not been able to walk, who have they've been in chronic pain, they've been overprescribed opiates, to see them get pain relief and to, again, see them be able to go about their lives and to see the, impact it's had on them. And, that's what really keeps you going, right? I mean, for me, that's what keeps me going, is being able to see the direct impact that we can have on people's lives. And I think that's what it's all about right there. It's we're all here trying to make the world a better place and help people get better and feel better. And it's nice to be able to see it in such a sort of visceral way.
That is beautiful. And I think that really says it all. When you can work in a field where you can help people live higher quality, better lives, there's nothing better. So I want to just share a couple more slides with everyone about what's next. Clinical research is a field where we are today working on tomorrow's medicine. The next treatments to cancer, to heart disease, to stroke, to so many other conditions are being worked on as we speak. The vaccines for COVID-19 were created and then tested in clinical trials, as well as all of these therapeutics for all kinds of different conditions. It's such an exciting time to be in this industry. And Brad, I want to thank you for being with us today. It's such a pleasure to have you. For those of you who asked questions and you didn't get them answered, we would like to talk to you. We have so many success stories of people we work with in this industry who are making other people's lives better. And in the process, they are in a great career and making their own lives better too. So please give us a call if you have questions and we weren't able to answer. We do have classes coming up. The next 2 are October 16th and November 6th. No one's there right now if you call, but if you contact us tomorrow, or you can also email us or visit our website, the number and the emails are on the screen. Brad Hightower, the owner of Hightower Clinical, as well as the host and founder of Note to File, one of the top podcasts in the clinical research field, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Brad, it's such a pleasure. And I look forward, now that we've met on screen, hopefully one day we can meet in person.
Oh, I'm sure we will. And I appreciate you having me on. And again, I love what you guys are doing. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, you too. And it's so great to stay connected. I really enjoy everything you're doing. I love the podcast. Keep it up. So everyone, note to file, you can find it on anywhere you find your podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, any of those places. And you can hear from many other people in the clinical research industry. I highly recommend it. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today and taking your evening out with us. It's a pleasure to talk to you all. Please give us a call, send us an email, and we look forward to hearing from you. Brad, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.